Shivani Chetty is a bona fide entrepreneur and the founder of EventMate. It is a platform that develops technology solutions to address event industry issues, specifically for event organizers and suppliers. Shivani entered the corporate world with the aim to gain valuable business experience as operational intelligence for Samsung, running mobile and web app releases for sales teams across Southern Africa. She found so much fulfillment in arranging events that she started her own events company and landing Nando's as her first client. On the podcast, Shivani and I talk about her failure to launch story of EventMate, how she has an online coaching program, and how she deals with rejection and failure. I hope that you enjoy. Really excited to chat to you because I know your story. I mean, we've met before at Future Females. I've heard the story before, and I just thought it's such a powerful one. So I'm just going to kick right into it and just ask the fire heart question. You had a bit of a failure to launch story, and you launched your business EventMate as lockdown hit. So as we all know, events, conferences, everything was shut down, everything closed around the world and cancelled. So it must have felt like all this work has gone to waste. But how did you manage to persevere? Because now EventMate, the app is up and running and doing quite successfully.
Okay, so here's a bit of background context. So in February 2020, I had just hired an extra 10 people to join my business. We were due to launch an app, the main app of our startup, to 155 early adopters in South Africa on the 30th of March 2020. That's early customers, right? Yeah. And a week before that, South Africa goes into a hard lockdown. And it's basically living from month to month because we don't know what's going to happen or when this lockdown is going to be lifted,
or when the
what is
president's
happening.
Going to say another 2 weeks, another week.
Exactly. So yeah, it was a horrible situation. Where I mean, and because we're in the events industry, we create apps for the events industry. We only came out of a lockdown a year and a half later.
Yeah.
Where people could actually host events and use our apps. So it was a very difficult 2 years because I lost my startup team of 12 that I just hired, most of them. And then I had most of the businesses who were my customers that went under because of COVID. And I think the most important lesson I've learned over the last 2 years was, especially with the COVID situation and how it affected my business, was how to be present. How to handle things minute to minute, moment to moment, and not overthink things, because I couldn't do that. I didn't know what was going to happen tomorrow or the next day or the next week.
That also, I think, takes a lot of patience and resilience in order to just keep putting one foot off the other, because it wasn't just one lockdown case, there were several. And then events were back on and then they were taken away again. It takes a lot of resilience. And thank you for sharing as well what you said your biggest lesson was kind of learning through it. How is the business doing now? I know that we discussed this, but I'd like for any of those listening to hear that, you know, you're going from a failure to launch story. What's happening in the business now?
So I'm waiting for my travel documents. I will be launching EventMate India in the next few months. Yay, me. Yay, our company.
Yes, yeah.
So it's the same app that we failed to launch in March 2022 to 155 customers in South Africa. We are launching to 300 customers in both South Africa, India, and the United States in the next few months.
Wow. States and India, two really big places. And what have you found has been like a key distinct differences in the markets between, you know, South Africa, India, and the States?
Well, you know, I think you would agree with me because of your background. It's a different audience set completely. For my industry, South Africa, our audience is mainly female event businesses or event planners, or family-led or run event businesses or planners. Whereas India, it's more male-dominated industry with a different language, with a different culture. So we really had to and are doing a lot of research into that market before we launch into it, because it's very different. Marketing and advertising wise, it's pretty much the same. So compared to South Africa. So if I want to connect with someone in India, I would use the same marketing or advertising routes as South Africa. So Telegram, Facebook, WhatsApp. Those are the normal channels that they use to get in contact, and LinkedIn. America is very different. We've only got about 12 customers there yet, but I'm happy to even have one. But they're more marketing and advertising savvy, so you need to know how to sell to them. And I'm not quite sure we're hitting it right as yet. So a lot of our, when I'm in the US, a lot of our customer research will be into actually understanding the psychographics of the customers there and understanding what they respond to in terms of advertising and marketing.
And you also do an online coaching program. And I know that you've covered how to take rejection and accept failure, or kind of roll with the punches, I think is a better way to phrase it. So this question is sort of twofold, is that how do you personally handle failure, and did you use your failure to launch story in the online coaching?
When I had a corporate career once, I was a massive perfectionist and OCD. So I wanted things done precisely as they should. And
a lot like me.
yeah. So there's steps that you need to follow and things need to get done. And when you start your own business and become an entrepreneur, it is the complete opposite. It is just problems everywhere, and you're trying to learn as fast as you can about how to hire people, how to advertise, who is your customer, legal documents about the law. It's a whole lot of stuff that comes up that you have to learn, and you have to get comfortable with failing and being rejected, especially if you're a founder or a business owner, because most of your job is sales, right? And if you haven't defined who your customer is or found the profile of who your customer is, there is a lot of approaching of the wrong person to sell your products or your service to. And that leads to a lot of rejection and failure. I'll give you one story. So I was pitching to Danone and Bryanston for an event. So my first company was an event company. And I'm standing in a boardroom full of these really important people of Danone South Africa, and my pitch completely fails. I lose eye contact. I'm drowning, and it's like 10 minutes left of this presentation. And I remember after that, I went home and I couldn't get out of bed for a week because I felt like such a failure, because I was this corporate success and I did everything right. And why couldn't I get this right? They don't teach you about entrepreneurship in school, and they don't teach you about how to fail positively or healthily in school. So that's one of the things that I had to learn, how to get up in the morning after a massive failure. And that took me on a whole journey of understanding myself and how I speak to myself, and what triggers certain reactions within me, that led me to learn how to overcome my rejection and failure. The coaching business is a complicated story. I actually started it during COVID as a way to bring money into my business.
Okay. So it was a way you pivoted during COVID, during lockdown.
Well, yeah, I still had 12 people's salaries to pay, and I wasn't willing to give up on my dream yet. And lucky I didn't give up on my dream. So I had to find a way to get money into the business, and coaching startups and businesses internationally was the way that I brought money into the business. So that's how it started. And how do I put this? I wanted to also give back a little bit, because I had people asking me, General questions that I didn't need to charge for, but I could give free advice on.
Mm.
So I thought, why not just create an online business coaching profile on Instagram and just share little bites of knowledge as I coach businesses and entrepreneurs.
What else do you discuss on your online coaching?
So we've just finished a series on failure and rejection. So on that series, I basically describe all the rituals I use in the mornings to set me up for a day, especially if I'm going to face a rejection or failure on the day. How do I deal with it as a rejection or failure is happening, and how do I end off the day and just shut it down so that I can start the day anew? Now we're busy. We've just finished that series. Now I'm busy on a series on winning the customer. So just getting the basics in place about how do you know who your customer is, how to get the information, and how to speak to people to find out what the basic customer profile is. And later on, I'll go into marketing and sales, especially how to overcome sales objections, which is really, really important as an entrepreneur or business owner.
And how can any of the listeners find you in case they need some avid coaching with regards to any of these skills?
Okay, so you can find me on any of my social media profiles. So at Instagram, it's at Shivani.Chetty, or on Facebook, I think it's Shivani.Chetty1690. And in my bio or my profile, you'll have a link where you can book a free 30-minute coaching session with me via Calendly.
Awesome. So you caught my attention a little bit about like rituals and little tips. So I wanted to ask if you could share just like one tip about how someone can handle rejection and how they can also learn from failure.
Okay, so I think the most important thing is what do you say to yourself and how do you handle rejection and failure as it's happening. So I have a set of cards with things that I've written down on it that I say to myself.
Like actual physical cards.
Actual physical cards.
Okay.
I got an email from a client that they weren't interested in my services, right? Or they didn't have the money, they couldn't afford it right now. So I will sit in front of the mirror as that failure or rejection happened, and I'll say things to myself like, Shivani, this is outside of you. I know that you're sad or disappointed that you didn't get this client. And you put in all that effort writing out that email and having phone calls, and it just didn't happen. You need to understand that it's outside of you and it's not necessarily happening because of something wrong with you. There's other circumstances that you cannot see. So you just need to let this go because there's better things coming. And just learning not to take it personally.
Oh, that's definitely something, everyone always listens to like mindfulness podcasts and it's all about how you talk to yourself, obviously. But I think what people also often underestimate is that it's a constant thing that you have to do. It's not like if you're going to say that to yourself once, it'll be like, fine and let go. You have to keep saying those kind of things to yourself for it to really sink in. It's never understand why people understand that, there's a reason why they say practice makes perfect. Mindfulness is the same thing. You don't walk onto the sports field and expect to be a superstar on day one. It takes practice. So that's very powerful. Yes. I think that's something that's really great. Now you made me think I want to go write cards now.
Go do it. It helps because sometimes in the moment, I found that I don't always know what to say to myself. So if I write it down and use it sort of like an affirmation, but for a specific situation, it helps.
Yeah. So it's almost like those affirmation cards that I've seen like circulate around. Because I was just thinking the same thing now, actually, is that sometimes you don't know what to say. So maybe it's just a luck of the draw of the cards.
Yeah. Well, if you think about the way that we cope with failure and rejection, it is repeated patterns from our childhood, right? So every single time we got something wrong or were rejected from a person or from an opportunity and stuff like that, we kept saying the same things over and over again to ourselves. And that created different neural pathways in our brain, and it became subconscious to a point where you are automatically reacting to a situation instead of responding to it. And what the cards help me do is create a new pattern of things that I say to myself or think to myself when a rejection or failure happen. So I kind of undo that coping mechanism that I created within myself when I was a kid.
That's very powerful. You've got me, my brain's just going down. I'm thinking about all the things. I'm like, because this week I'm like, oh, there's been some rejection this week and I haven't coped too well with it. And now I'm like, childhood back. Don't react, respond.
Yeah.
And then just the final question that I ask everyone that comes onto the podcast is that what does feminine leadership mean to you?
Okay, so I watched your interview with Philippa Dodds. I was very impressed by it.
Thank you. I'll let Phil know.
So I actually very much agree with her when it comes to, I wouldn't say gender leadership, but feminine and male energy when it comes to leadership. So I use a lot of my female energy when it comes to collaborations or empathy when I deal with my staff or an irate customer. And then I will use my masculine energy when I want to get things done. So when I want to rally my troops, when I want to get deadlines in, or when I want to make a sale. So I wouldn't necessarily define it as feminine leadership. I would define it more as being able to harness both your masculine and your feminine energies, depending on the situation that you find yourself in.
Yeah, perfect. So now we move on to a segment that I like to call the ABCs of your career. So starting with A, what was your amazing, affluent Oprah Winfrey aha moment in your career journey?
I was business intelligence, operational intelligence for Samsung, for Smollan. This was still in my corporate career. And I remember I was planning this party invite for an event that I was hosting for our team members that were coming in from across the country. And I was sitting next to my boss at the time, and I just looked at him and I'm like, you know, if I could do this for the rest of my life, I actually would. And in hindsight, I kind of am doing it. I'm like creating like automations for events, businesses, or for events. Yeah. But at the time, I didn't know that small little thought would become an aha moment that would launch me into becoming an entrepreneur and starting my own business.
Well, there you go. I helped you figure it out.
Yeah, because I didn't know. I actually did know I wanted to start a business. I just didn't know what business I wanted to start.
That's amazing. And B, what was a business blunder turned to blessing?
Look, so I'll be honest, I can't point to a specific one, but there's been many mistakes that I've made over the years. I think one of the rituals or one of the things that I do from a failure or rejection is I ask myself, what is the one thing that I've learned from this and how can I move forward? And why that's helped me is because you kind of get stuck thinking that if you make a mistake or if one way doesn't work, it means it's never going to work. And that's not true. It's just that you need to find another way around it or another solution to whatever didn't work or the mistake that happened, and learn to be kind to yourself.
Yeah. There was a woman that was on the podcast, Lise Khotlabi, who said it's not a failure or rejection, it's a redirection, which I really loved. It sat with me quite a lot. And C, what was a cinematic worthy cock-up moment?
Oh, I can tell you the most embarrassing thing that happened to me in corporate.
Well, if you're willing to share it.
So I was wearing a strapless dress to a meeting with a jacket on top of it. It's a nice smart jacket. And I thought I looked so nice, and the meeting went really well. And then as I stood up to leave, the dress went whoop, in front of these boardrooms. In the boardroom with my boss and this very important people. And I didn't know what to do. So I was like, pull up, smile, and just walk out
Thank
the
you
door.
for your time. I'll be going now.
Yeah, I think that was the biggest dramatic moment that has ever happened to me in my career.
That would be one of mine as well.
Yeah, I couldn't look my boss in the eye for a week.
Yeah, what was the outcome of that meeting afterwards? Did you get the deal? Was the contract? What happened? I'm curious.
So it was like one of the internal meetings with,
Oh, it
it
was
was
just
in
a normal
corporate.
internal meeting.
Yeah, but it was like all the big heads of departments
Oh,
of my company and my boss. And I was like literally just there with my boss taking notes. And then, yeah,
oh
dress
no.
goes down.
Shame. Oh, strapless dresses, beware. When
I've never worn a strapless dress after that.
oh, goodness. And now we move to our quick fire questions. So it's just really quick fire, whatever comes first to mind, just spit it out. So, one, if you could change the world's perception about one thing, what would it be?
Failure. Failure.
I love that. That's why we're on the podcast today.
Yeah.
And two, what is the worst piece of advice you've ever received?
There's been quite a few, especially when you're an entrepreneur, by people who have not been on this journey and don't understand how difficult it is.
Yeah.
I think go get a job. I'm just gonna say go get a job. Yeah, as an entrepreneur. Worst piece of advice. Don't listen.
I'm circling now a bit back to our discussion before, but when you launched EventMate Pro, was this the first business after you left your corporate job that you launched?
No, it wasn't. It was my second.
Okay.
My first business was an event planning business. But because of my background in tech, I was developing solutions for myself, technology solutions. So that's how EventMate started. I went and had a chat to my attorneys, and they told me, you can't have both because you're gonna be competing against people and building technology for them and looking at their background information.
Conflict
You're
of
gonna have to
interest.
make a choice. That's it. So I had to close the first business down.
So then when this person told you go get a job, was this during your first business or EventMate?
Look, so family and friends that are, they grew up with the conditioning, get a job, stay in a job for the next 20 years or climb up the corporate ladder and then just retire and live a good life. I've been told throughout my entrepreneurial career to just go and get a job and get a stable income.
Okay.
Yeah, I hope that answers your
Yeah,
question.
no, it does. And then in contrast of that, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Just take it step by step. Just breathe.
I like that. Patience. Patience is a virtue.
Yeah.
I'm not too sure what kind of books you read. So if you read fictional ones, if you could live in any book, which one would it be? Or what is your favorite book of all time that you can highly recommend? So you can answer both, or depending on what kind of books you read.
So I read a lot, both online and hard copy. I find myself, especially when you're a business owner and entrepreneur, you find yourself trying to develop yourself either emotionally or mentally all the time. I think the book that made the biggest impact on me when I first started and helped me through the first 5 years of running a business was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. Yeah, good book. Really good book.
On my reading list. Okay. Why did you find that so helpful?
Because it teaches you how to deal with yourself first before you deal with people outside of you. So how to time manage yourself, how to get the right positive mindset, how to speak to yourself. It teaches you that you have to, which is absolutely true, that you have to go within yourself and to unlearn quite a few things. He calls it the terrain.
Okay.
The terrain or the mind map that you've created in your mind and how to change that. And once you've done that, then you can go outside and start influencing people, especially as a business owner or as an entrepreneur. So you know, when you're always selling, you're always influencing, you're selling or you're influencing your staff to join your company or to be motivated to get something done. You're selling or you're influencing investors to invest in your businesses, or a customer to buy. There's a lot of sales and influencing that happens. So the thing that I found the most valuable about this book is that he teaches you how to deal with yourself first, and then how to go outside, and then to start using your actual influence and your power on the other people that come into your business.
Okay. I feel like this is meant to be a quick fire round, and I'm just making the question so much longer. I'm like, okay, tell me about this, tell me about that. So
I don't mind, go for it.
And this is the last question, and I might ask you to expand. I don't know, depends on what you say. Is 3 people that you would have over for dinner, for a dinner party, dead or alive?
That's interesting. There's so many. So I love history. Like I'm a history buff. So I firmly believe that the past influences or dictates the future. So there's so many people. This is such an interesting question. So there is a psychiatrist by the name of Viktor Frankl.
Yes, The Man's Search for Meaning. I know.
Oh yeah. So that book is also really good, guys.
So good.
So he was in a concentration camp, and his insights and his thoughts from that concentration camp and on how to live your life is brilliant. So definitely him. I'd want to pick his mind. What else? I like interesting people with complex stories, because I feel like I just want to pick their brain and listen and find out what made them made a decision.
You don't have to explain. It's your dinner party.
I don't know. There's so many. Maybe Mahatma Gandhi, definitely. Okay. Let's take an interesting figure from history that I just want to find out about. There's this Chinese philosopher. I can't remember his name.
Let me just quickly hop on Google's. Lao Tzu. Yes.
That's it.
I know who you're talking about now. Okay, that's it's kind of, because philosophical people as well, and very spiritual, because they all kind of talk about that perseverance and that human spirit and perseverance. So I can imagine sitting at that table and hearing about the human spirit and spirituality and perseverance. Oh, can I come as well?
I think yeah, you can. You're invited. I think what's interesting for me is like they actually conquered themselves first before they started influencing people. So that's the most interesting thing to me. Like, I just want to find out, what did you do to conquer yourself, to understand yourself, that led people to want to follow you?
I love that so much. I feel like I resonate on it quite a lot, because I think it's the scariest thing to not understand yourself. So I'm always like wanting to have like personal nights where I like sit and think like into myself, like, why am I doing these things? Like, why do I act this way? So I really resonate with that. That would be quite the dinner party. That's the end of our interview. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. I know it went so quickly.
It did.
It just that was it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. That was fun. I enjoyed that.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and being so honest as well with what's happened and, how you deal with situations. I'm sure lots of people who do listen to this will find it very helpful, and then take some time to look into themselves and also speak kindly to themselves.
Thank you so much, Nikki.